You are listening to the ForceCom Frontline, bringing you to our soldiers on the front lines of readiness. Hey everyone, welcome to the ForceCom Frontline. I'm Ashley and I'm your host. With the new year upon us, we thought this was a great opportunity to talk about goal setting and what we can do to help us stick to our New Year's resolutions. So here to talk with us today is Drew Hammond, and he is the Holistic Health and Fitness Director for the 44th Med Brigade. Hi Drew, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So like I said, we just started a new year. Lots of people set resolutions and lots of people also fail to keep those resolutions. I'm 100% guilty of that. But you're here to talk to us about what we can do to help set ourselves up for success. So where do we start?
It's a great question, and I think the fitness industry would pay you millions of dollars if you could definitively answer that. One trick that I have used in the past and that I have used with athletes that I've coached is to take advantage of the momentum of the new year to put something on the calendar that might be a couple of months down the road. So, you hear a lot of people, for example, say, "Oh, I'm gonna train for a 5K or whatever," and the momentum is high January 1st.
Sure.
So use that to get online and schedule something. And once that's on the books, then get into the gym, get on the treadmill or whatever the goal might be, and just let that kind of carry itself into the date. And what I have found when that is done well is that not only do you check that box of New Year's resolution, but you also kind of establish a habit that tends to last a little bit longer than just joining a gym on January 1st.
Along with everybody else who has that same idea. So I think, and you sort of hit on it a little bit, but one aspect of starting anything is creating that new routine, whether it be bringing your lunch to work every day and not getting food out, or going to the gym 5 days a week, whatever it is. Changing your routine is hard. What are some of the things we can do to help us adopt changes in our routine that support our goals?
Man, well, it's one of those things where I think you could have a conversation about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, which I think is important. And we've seen that if you're intrinsically motivated to do something, you obviously tend to stick to it a little bit longer. Now, how to intrinsically motivate people is a whole separate conversation. But different tips and strategies. I mean, I think have an honest conversation with yourself about where the barriers are to get from where you're at to where you want to be. So, meal prep is a popular one. And if some of the hurdles are time, there's a lot of resources out there for recipes that are relatively quick.
Yeah.
Getting to the grocery store, if that's a challenge, then maybe take a look at your weekend or the afternoons that you do have available and tweak your schedule a little bit. I think all too often people fall into this trap of thinking that, just because the way things are right now is the way things are always going to be. And I think if you really give an honest assessment of, like I mentioned, your schedule, your commitments, you can probably shuffle those things around a little bit more than you think. And if it comes to establishing a new habit or introducing any kind of new behavior, kind of by definition, that requires you to make room for some things.
Yeah.
So that, I realize that's sort of a vague, politically correct answer, but I think you do have to find ways of falling in love with the process and not just the outcome, because if the outcome were easy, you probably would have done it a long time ago.
Absolutely. I heard once that if you can stick to something for 21 days, then it will really help with your routine. Did I just make that up?
I don't know. That's one of those things where it's like, one resource is 21 days, another resource is probably 17.
Yeah.
I would think that if you do it for 21 days, yeah, you probably keep doing it.
Sure.
But again, I think it is. Yeah, you have to set yourself up for small wins as opposed to just pushing towards one big one, because that becomes challenging.
Yeah, I'm a working mom of 2 kids who have activities in the afternoon, and my husband's in the Army, so it's difficult. But I get up at 4:30 every morning, and we have a bike that does other things too. I'm sure you can figure it out. So that's my thing. I get up every morning and I do that. And at first, it really stunk getting up at 4:30. But you know what? I've been doing it for, I don't know, 30 weeks now. I only know that because it keeps track of my streak. But also having something like that where not only do you compete against other people on this leaderboard to do better than them, you compete against yourself to push past your
Yeah.
personal record. But then it
Yeah.
also keeps track of all these achievements too. So I have
Hmm.
found that something like that competition motivates me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think too, like the other things you'll hear people say is, and social media, I think is big with this, is if you do have a goal, like publicize that to a group of friends or whatever, accountability buddies.
Yeah.
Um, that's one of those things for me. It can be person dependent because for some people they respond really well to that. For
Yeah.
others, it could potentially set them up for disaster and disappointment if they don't fulfill that goal. And now
Sure.
you've got this circle of friends asking why. So it is another strategy, but yeah, it's hard.
What did you call a
Accountability buddies.
that? I like that. Accountability buddies. I'm going
I don't
with
think I
that.
made it up, but I'll take credit for it.
I like it. So, we were talking about, meal planning and everything too. And
Mhm.
again, I'm my own personal experience. Before I had kids, so easy. Every
Yeah.
Sunday I would be in the kitchen cooking. And now it's an extra thing that you have to do on top of, oh wait, my kids won't eat what I'm cooking for me and my
Right.
husband.
Right.
Then you have to cook
Hmm.
another meal. So, it, like you said, it is finding that time and adapting, and
Yeah.
figuring out what is important.
Well, and make it easy too, like especially with meal prep. And I'm a bad example with this because I've had chicken thighs and rice like every day for lunch for probably a decade. Um, but make it easy. And I think again, I'll turn to social media on this one too. Like you'll see people that will make meal prep look very fancy and
Yeah,
complicated, and it requires all these ingredients and you do all these things. Like it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, you can
sure.
instant pots,
Yeah,
grill. You can throw a bunch of chicken onto a grill and be done for the week in,
yeah,
15 minutes. So it requires a little bit of education up front, I think, to figure out, what's a protein versus a carb versus a fat. But if you can land on, I don't know, 3 or 4 meals that are just easy, quick, and you can knock them out in an hour. Because the alternative too, again, specific to meal prep is, if you're cooking for yourself, just double the recipe and then you got lunch for tomorrow. And I
yeah,
think that strategy for me has always been a little bit more challenging. But for some folks, that works as opposed to the big cook up on Sunday. So there's options out there.
yeah, absolutely. We were chicken breast, brown rice, and zucchini before we had kids. That was our meal every Sunday. That's what we ate. And that was also like mid-20s. Things have changed drastically. But
Yeah, my 2-year-old just started eating chicken thighs, and that was a big day because I think chicken thighs trump chicken breasts all day.
shoot, my kids, they want like, I don't even know what my daughter wants, yogurt
Yeah,
24/7.
yogurt and M&Ms.
I guess it could, yes. I guess it could be worse. And my
Yeah,
son
right.
is like chicken Alfredo every day, all day, and tacos and pizza.
Jeez,
Like,
fancy.
I know. And so then you're balancing,
Yeah.
you have the kids that you have to, neither one of them eat the same thing. And then there's me and
Hmm.
my husband. So it's like 4 meals, 3 meals every night.
Yeah.
But I, like you said, routine. It's just become part of what we're doing. And we've just figured out how to make that work.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's not always easy. You go on
Yeah.
vacation, you have a weekend where you totally derail everything that you've done. So what is your advice, to somebody who has been in that situation, who has completely fallen off their routine, their track, all of that? How do they get started again? And should we really worry about like a weekend or every now and then?
People assume that it is just sort of one forward step after another, and there's no room to fall off of the rails. Um, and again, like that's one of the things that if you look at the fitness industry or the human performance space, they want you to think that because it doesn't force you, but it sort of drives you to buy more things, invest more time, join more places. But when you take account of the fact that like we're all human beings and we're living life, like it is impossible to keep moving up. You will
Yeah.
you will you will fall off the wagon, so to speak. So I think if you reframe the internal dialogue with yourself around, hey, if today is me and in 3 months I want to do that 5K or whatever the event is or the thing or the goal, be okay with the fact that for 5 of those days or however many of those days it may not go the way that you planned. Having said that, there is a tipping point where if you are consistently falling off, then maybe we reevaluate the timeline or we reevaluate the goal or whatever, because you should be pursuing something, I would think, that it kind of motivates you towards the achievement of that thing. And if it doesn't, then like I said, reevaluate.
Sure.
Um, but be okay with a misstep, because the other thing too to consider, and I deal with this a lot, especially with folks that I coach remotely, because they'll have travel or they'll have something that will get, quote unquote, get in the way of training. And sure, you might miss a training session, but the in exchange for that, you had a phenomenal day at the beach with your spouse,
Yeah.
and that is still a net positive when it comes to the outcome. So again, it's one of those things, just kind of to put a bow on it, where if it's happening consistently, that's sort of a different conversation around like, hey, let's reevaluate, again, the timeline, the goal, whatever. If it's only happening occasionally, like that's just part of being human.
I'm with you 100%. I think, if we give up everything that we like, you're not going to stick to that. I think that
Exactly.
that is impossible. I think that and again, going back to my 20s, when my husband was deployed, I lived alone and things were so easy. I had a boss who told me, I have one day a week where I eat and drink whatever I want. And I know that that is my day, but the next day I might feel a little bloated and I'm going to carry on. And I know that I had that one day. And that's always kind of stuck with me, because weekends are hard. Just even the weekends, not even talking about vacation, but sometimes you want to go out and you want to have a beer with dinner.
Yeah.
And you don't want to feel terrible about yourself. And I think
Right.
putting out in the atmosphere that yes, you can have a beer at dinner, helps a lot of people probably stick with their goals long run.
Well, and I think and again, this is one of those things, I'll misquote the research, I'm sure, but like they have shown that if you do allow, like you mentioned, that cheat day,
Yeah,
or that cheat meal, people tend to be more compliant because they know, maybe your cheat meal is Sunday or whatever, and on Tuesday night you really want pizza. Instead of reaching for the pizza, you say, okay, I am okay with putting that off till Sunday because I know
right.
I can have it then. Whereas if you leave yourself no room to maneuver,
Yeah.
you're a lot more likely to just cave in anytime an impulse comes up.
Absolutely. My mom, my mom does keto, and I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
I don't know how you do keto. If I had to give up all of that, I just,
Yeah.
and for me, again, it goes back to those restrictions that we're putting on ourselves. And is there a better way? If I want to lose weight, if I want to do whatever my goal is, do I have to give up everything, or can I find an
Mhm.
option that works for me? And I think, a lot of getting in shape and eating healthy and all of that is really finding what works for you. And if you can figure that out, you're going to stick with your goal a lot better.
Yeah. And the other thing I would add to that too is like and I realize it's one thing for me to say this given where I sit in the fitness industry, but like it's not that hard. And we within this space overcomplicate things in order to, again, drive you to buy things, join things, what have you.
Sure.
But the act of being healthy is not challenging.
Yeah.
It just requires a little bit of movement during the day, some conscious choices about what you
Yes.
eat, and then, if you want to get into kind of some of the mindfulness, cognitive stuff, like just taking care of yourself mentally, spiritually, whatever that looks like. So you don't need to buy the expensive bike or join the expensive gym or buy, like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, in the sense that like just being a little bit more, being 1% better than what you are now is a great starting point. And if that means we're drinking water at lunch instead of Coke, then like
Yeah.
there we go, we're on
Yeah.
our way.
I
um
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. No,
I I saw something the other day that just said, adding 30 minutes just 3 times a week even can
mhm.
have a significant impact on your health.
Oh yeah.
All right, so you're an H2F director. I love H2F. I've heard nothing but great things from soldiers about H2F. I've talked a lot about the program. But when we talk about H2F, when we talk about goal setting, how can soldiers utilize H2F to help them set their goals?
um Really, there's a couple of different ways. The folks that we have that work in our cognitive performance, kind of mental performance pillar, specialize in goal setting. So if you're an individual or you're in charge of a group of individuals that want to actually get some tangible knowledge about goal setting, get in touch with those guys. If your brigade has H2F, then you should have an avenue for doing that. If your brigade does not have H2F, then I would say reach out to one of the brigades that do, and they can point you in the right direction. So there's that. outside of the actual tactile goal setting curriculum, you can also partner up with strength coaches, with dietitians. If you've got some niggling injuries and one of your goals is to kind of get past that, we've got folks that can deal with that too. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is within whatever your ideas are about human performance, about what training for the ACFT or passing selection for something, or just getting better at running, 9.5 times out of 10, there will be somebody within H2F that can help you do that. And if what you need, we mentioned accountability buddies, like that's essentially what we in H2F are, accountability buddies to like, oh, hey, you got an ACFT coming up in 3 months and you want to do well, like, let me help you achieve that, whether it's writing a program or working on your diet or what have you.
Yeah.
So, again, if you're at a brigade that has it, reach out to your team. If you're at a brigade that does not, reach out to one of the brigades that do, and they will point you in the right direction.
So I'm going off into left field for a second. You talked about
Sure.
coaching other people and doing some coaching online. What's your background before you were doing H2F?
So I'm from North Carolina, so I'm not far from home, which is nice. And my degree, an undergraduate degree, is in business, which is totally out of the blue for exercise
Yeah.
science. But then I did go overseas to Scotland and the UK to do my master's in strength and conditioning, and that's when I started working with professional sport, a little bit with the military, and then if folks are familiar at all with how human performance works in special operations, I worked with Air Force Special Operations as a strength and conditioning coach for a number of years. And that's when I was first introduced to this idea of kind of embedded human performance teams within a military setting. And then once the H2F positions back home here in North Carolina at Fort Bragg opened up, I switched gears and came over to H2F. So most strength and conditioning coaches have a background in kind of American collegiate or professional sport. I was very different in that I went overseas first and then came back. So I've been in tactical human performance for my whole career.
What I find so great about H2F is that we're talking about human performance. We're talking about helping soldiers in the athletic part about being a soldier. And the people who are involved with H2F all have those backgrounds. It's not like some Joe Schmo who really likes to go to the gym is
Yeah,
now going to tell you how to
exactly.
work out.
Exactly. And again, like different teams are constructed of different folks with different backgrounds, but we ran the numbers for our guys when we were putting a brief together. Most of my strength coaches are prior service, so they kind of understand the nature of the game.
Sure.
And then, any HF team that you come across, they're going to have multiple decades of cumulative experience of training people. And so maybe that's a call to action to all the soldiers out there where it's like, and this isn't a knock against them, like you may think that you know the right way to train for the job, and you might, but you also have access to resources that can just give you a second set of eyes and can
Yeah.
say, hey, maybe we tweak this, maybe we change that. Or if you have no clue, you have folks that can literally get you started.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I already mentioned I do a lot of my workout at home, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm often worried about my form. Am I doing my squat the right way or
Mm-hmm.
whatever? And so I'm sure I used to have a trainer. It's nice to have that extra set of eyes to
Oh
know
yeah.
that, yep, I'm actually doing this the right way.
Oh yeah.
So so we are running out of time, but I want to get your bluff to someone who hasn't maybe set a goal yet or wants to set a goal. What would you tell them?
Um, I mean, the short, easy one is like just do it. But I realize that doesn't necessarily get most folks started. I think, you know, it generally comes off the back of a conversation, an honest conversation about like what's that one thing that you've wanted to do, but you feel is kind of just out of reach. So maybe it's not necessarily signing up for the 100-mile ultra, but
Right.
it could be the local 5K, or maybe it's not, going to the Olympics to be a weightlifter, but a lot of local gyms do competitions or things like that, if that's what you want to
Sure.
do. And it doesn't even have to be a competition. It could just be like, hey, when I go and hang out with my kids or my grandkids, there's this like hike we like to do, and it's challenging. So find something that is within the realm of possible, but just out of reach. And then, like we mentioned when we kicked this off, like put that on the calendar and let people know about it so that you have, again, the accountability buddies. So you have people that know that you want to do it. And then from there, it's literally just figuring out what's the next step and what's in the way of that. And then once you knock that one down, what's the next step? What's in the way of that? Whether it's meal prep or getting to the gym, maybe you change your daily schedule around, what have you. Um, I don't know if that's a bluff. That's kind of a long answer for a bluff,
It's okay.
but that's where I would start.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think, yeah, like we said, starting anything new can be a challenge. And
Hmm.
going into the gym for the first time can be a challenge for some people. You think you're being judged the whole time.
Hmm.
But like you said, if you can set a goal, something that you really want to attain, I think that does help.
Absolutely.
So I want to say thank you. I enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And sorry my phone rang halfway through the chat.
You're good. All right, so now that we've talked about setting goals, I want to introduce Sergeant Vincent Leonard, and he is a soldier with the 62nd Med Brigade at a JBLM, and he's going to talk to us about how he actually utilized H2F in goal setting. So, hi, Sergeant Leonard, thank you for joining me. Now, you have utilized for yourself H2F, correct?
Yes, I have.
Do you mind sharing a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like I said, before my injury, so I actually ended up in 2021. So, October 2021, I tore my ACL. Um, I was actually down at Master Fitness Trainers course, and I tore my ACL, MCL, and meniscus. I had a full tear of the ACL and then partial tears of the meniscus and MCL. Uh, but before that, I utilized H2F even with the coaches, like just for my performance,
Sure.
and all that. But then afterwards, I utilized H2F in a way that I came back. So whenever I came back from my Master Fitness Trainer course after I tore my ACL, I went directly to our physical therapists that were on site, because uh, beforehand you would have to wait weeks and weeks to see physical
Sure.
therapists and all this. But I had the opportunity to go directly to our injury control department, who then acted like really, really quickly, and actually got like imaging done, and found out that the extenses of my injury within 2 weeks of it actually happening.
Wow.
Talked to, was able to talk to the surgeon because it was apparent I had to have surgery. Um, got all this done in such a short amount of time, but so I utilized injury control for that reason. But then also, I got to use the nutrition department prior to my surgery, to talk to them about, hey, how can I best uh, like shift and make my diet in a way to help heal myself faster, because I had no idea. I no clue what I was doing,
Sure.
and so I utilized the nutrition department in that, and they also helped me, like, hey, this is kind of like not necessarily a diet plan, but this is how you should eat, what times you should eat, all this, but also to help with sleep and
Okay.
recovery. And then the biggest thing I used, H2F, and I think that a lot of people haven't utilized, was the mental readiness department.
Sure.
Um, and the way I used the mental readiness department was, at first I was very kind of hesitant to use it,
I don't think
because
you're alone in
there's a,
that.
yeah, and I think a lot of people are the same. They, there's a stigmatism that comes with it.
Yeah.
Um, and it was, again, the coaches and then one athletic trainer that really like pushed me and encouraged me to go and actually talk to Pam Lemons, our sports psychologist, and utilized her in a way to kind of best prepare myself mentally for this surgery that was coming up, because this was the third surgery I was having in
Wow.
my life, because I've had multiples from sports,
Okay.
and so just I knew what was coming, and a lot of times it's super easy to get down and depressed and like kind of feel sorry for yourself, and it's a daunting thing to have to go through surgery, especially whenever you're in the military.
Sure.
Um, and so, utilizing the mental readiness department to really, like, one of the big things that we were doing was goal setting. Um, and then also how to shift like the way that I was looking at setbacks or things that weren't necessarily a positive thing that was happening in my life, just kind of shift my way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And and rather than look at setbacks as a negative thing, uh, I learned how to look at setbacks as an opportunity to create a new strength of mine.
Okay.
And from goal setting, and how to actually how to properly set goals, and that was a big thing. And I know you just talked to someone about how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so utilizing that the mental readiness department to help me with that really kind of set my way of thinking before I went into surgery.
That's awesome. And one of the other things we just talked about was he called it accountability buddies. So like
Yeah,
having somebody who is there to, be your support team. You put something out on social media and then you have people who know what you're working for. Did you utilize or did you have support from your friends and family?
yeah. So I think I have an amazing wife. She's an amazing human being, and she was my rock and my support through everything. Um, but also, I made a lot of friends in H2F. Like my family's back in Missouri, and so yeah, like phone calls, and I do have a great support back home, but it's different, I think, to be able to have a support in person.
Absolutely.
Um, and the H2F team as a whole, because what's really cool is they work together. Like I
Yeah.
said, they work holistically. Um, and they really like treated me as family and helped me through everything. So like mental readiness would talk to the injury control department, who would then talk to the coaches, and they worked fluidly together to kind of help build this like program, but like a support team for me.
So
And it felt like it was
they're almost your accountability buddies.
they were 100% they were. Yeah,
That
definitely.
And you're not the first person who I've talked to about H2F who has said like this team is a team who has your back and really looks after you.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to the fact that their mission is soldiers.
Yeah.
You know, they
Absolutely.
they, they get the opportunity to just build that team to have your back.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you, you have a ton of knowledge about H2F being the NCOIC, but you've also utilized H2F in recovering from an injury.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to somebody who might be looking to achieve something or is maybe overcoming an injury?
So advice for someone overcoming an injury um, would be one of the first things I actually like really learned with one of my first appointments with mental readiness, and it was focus on the things that you can do, not the things that you can't do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so building off of what you can do, it just makes every day positive rather than negative. And it is easy to focus on
Absolutely.
things that you can't do. It really is,
Yeah.
especially whenever you're going through an injury, because that's kind of like that's all that's on your mind, and then you go down this like spiral of I can't do this, I can't do this, I'm not good, I'm not good enough for this, and it gets worse and worse the more you go
Absolutely.
down that. But if you make it a point to focus on what you can do in the moment, um, then you also realize that uh, there's a lot more things that you can do than there are things that you can't do. There's only
Absolutely.
a few things that you can't do usually, and a ton of things that you can do.
I think that's
And so,
such a great message. I think that's an
yeah,
amazing message. And I think even in not thinking about injuries, that's something that I think that we really people need to think about and focus on. Maybe not what you can do, but what are all the positives that are happening in your life rather than focusing on, this one negative thing that happened. I think that's a great little nugget right there.
yeah, yeah, it's good.
Um, But so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and share about your goal setting experience, your experience with H2F. You've got a ton of knowledge. I could probably talk to you for a lot longer. Maybe we'll have to do this again. But am I right in saying that your wife is expecting a baby soon?
Yes, you are.
Well, that is exciting. How much longer?
We have just 5 weeks left.
Oh my goodness. Do you know what you're having?
Yeah. A boy.
I'm going to put all your business out here now.
That's all right. Thank you.
Well, that's very exciting.
Thank you so much.
So again, thank you. I appreciate you rounding out this conversation for us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.